about the pain, only gritted her teeth. But most soldiers never get a flower or a wreath. She like G.I. Jane in the war with no relief. Don't recognize why killers was going through her beat. She said more prayers than the nun did. After seeing so much struggles with only one kid, the clinic said baby number 2 couldn't be undid. 9 months later, delivery and it's one big. But this time it was an older dude. But the shit happened so fast she barely know the dude. Damn, but we all make mistakes though. And the older we get, that's how mistakes go. So he claimed the baby, now with no money. He said shit was hard and his dollars was kinda funny. Real was feeling like that was strike 2. So when it rains and pours, that's just how life do. She was thinking about her childhood and how life flew. A daddy she always loved, but she never quite knew.
Jacqueline.
Yes, Mom?
I wanted to talk to you about something and... Oh, wait. Hold on. I just got a text. Oh, there's another one. Wow. Busy me. So anyway...
Oh, wait, Mom. I just got a message. My friends keep commenting on my comment. Oh, there's another one. So many comments on my comment.
Oh, I can't wait to watch TV tonight. Playoffs!
Hey guys, check out my new video game. Pew, pew.
Wait, Mom, what? Huh?
What? Hold
What'd
on.
you say? Wait a second, what?
This weekend, unplug. Take your family to the forest. There's nothing in the world like experiencing nature firsthand. Trees, paths, bluebirds, streams. Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family.
You are listening to BeExposedRadio.com.
Now we're talking with Mervin A. Bourne Jr.
and Lolita E. Walker,
where you get it from a man's
and a woman's perspective.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Now We're Talking with Mervin and Lolita.
Hello, happy Thursday. We are so excited that you are here with us on another Thursday from 7 to 9 Eastern Standard Time.
That's right. Yep, we have another great show for you this week.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about quite a few things related to criminal law, the criminal justice system, and we have a very special guest for you this week.
We do. We have attorney Dwight Pettit. And I'm so excited that he's able to join us because as everybody out there, I'm sure, has either seen or have heard or have scrolled through Facebook or Instagram, Ms. Ava DuVernay came through with it one more time. I mean, this miniseries, When They See Us, is just so powerful. So powerful. And there's so many ways that we can go in talking about this. So we're going to break it down in the same 4 segments or specialties or chapters that she did for the miniseries. So before we get to that, let's talk about it. What were your wins for this week?
So this week I found out that I received a scholarship to a writer's retreat.
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
So last year I finished my first movie script and I submitted it for this writer's retreat competition and I was selected. So the writer's retreat actually takes place in France.
Nice.
So that's something that I'm making preparations for.
And so writer's retreat, so tell me about it. So you have this documentary, and then what's the writer's retreat about?
So basically what I submitted actually was completely separate from the documentary. It's actually a movie script that I wrote, a screenplay for a feature-length movie.
I love it.
And
I think you might have mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, so you go to the writer's retreat and you're basically mentored by movie studio executives. So they walk you through your script, teach you different ways to improve it and different ways to market it and things of that nature. So
okay.
Yeah.
Bam, congratulations.
Yeah, so that was good news.
That is excellent. That is really, really good news. For me, my win for this week is what? I've had so many. Let's just see. I think the one I'll choose for this week is, we've been talking about my women's retreat, which is September 19th through the 22nd. And I'm doing it in Purcellville, Virginia again. I just love the atmosphere. I love the environment. It's very serene. and I locked on a different location just down the street from where I normally have it, but I think this is just going to bring an extra special twist, and the house is a different type of feel, but it's going to be very powerful. So I'm super happy about that. Locked on that.
Good.
So I'm feeling good.
Good.
Yes, I'm feeling good. So if you haven't taken a look at it, go to lolitawalker.com. I'd love to invite all of the women out there, and the men who are out there, feel free to get it for the special woman in your life, so we can take time to pause as well. I love it. So let's talk more about what we're going to delve into today.
Yeah, so we have a really special guest, and we'll get into more deeply later when he comes in, his background and his history, but he's really a legend in criminal law in the state of Maryland. He's also an author. He's defended the likes of Ray Lewis, Mike Tyson, as well as fought extremely hard for regular, ordinary, everyday citizens of the state of Maryland, especially the city of Baltimore. He's been involved also in lawsuits against the government, the city of Baltimore. He's had so many successes in criminal law and criminal justice, and we're just really, really honored to have him as a guest today.
Yes, I mean, wrongful death cases, police brutality cases, settling out of court, making sure that the folks that you're defending are actually protected. And that's some of what we're going to talk about today as we talk about the Central 5 case. And it's not only about the Central Park 5, but that just really brings to life everything that's happening inside of the criminal justice system right now, right? The injustices that we see, our black and brown boys that are going into this system, sometimes for profit, just in the news this week. I feel like it was this week or last week, we see other state officials or, senior leaders that are now going to jail because they have participated in wrongful convictions or lengthier convictions to send these children to detention centers. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And when we talk about the 4 breakdowns, remember we said that a little earlier today as well. The first we're going to do is police aggression and arrest. The second is the court system and bail. The third is juvenile detention and parole. And the fourth is incarceration. And the reason we're breaking those down is because this topic, this mini-series, can take us so many directions. And we want to stay a little bit focused, but we want to answer your questions at the same time. So we're going to start with police aggression. And so if you have any questions on any of those, please send them in, because just like Mervin said, I mean, we have Attorney Pettit with us today, and now's the time to just kind of talk about it. Right? I love it. I'm really excited about this. Tell me, when you watched, you've seen the mini-series, right?
Yes.
When you watched it, what was some of the first things you thought?
Some of the things I thought, a few things. One, I immediately identified with the victims in the case, because I know that if I lived in New York City at that time, in that area, what's to say that couldn't happen to me or somebody in my family, one of my cousins, one of my uncles. I think the mistake a lot of us make, if we're able to live in, safe environments or environments where community policing is not an issue, we tend to take for granted that certain things can't happen to us, and that certain things are reserved for certain communities and other people, but that's actually not the case. And I was reading something today that pointed out how people were amazed that something like this could happen in New York City, which is known throughout the world for its diversity, for its acceptance of all different kinds of people with different faiths and backgrounds.
In the 80s, not even in the 50s or the 40s or the 60s.
And so I think that was, something that really struck me, is that this is a very real story. It's not an anomaly. It's not something that this is the only time in history that this has ever happened. And so that it just really brought the point home to me, because I remember when that was actually happening, I was a young boy, and I remember seeing the clips on the news and seeing the and it's funny because I was so young, I thought they were men. It didn't register to me that they were teenagers, but because I was so little, they just looked like men to me because I was a really young child. But Now that I'm an adult, my perspective is different, and I know that to an adult, those young teenagers should have been looked at as children.
Absolutely. And I think also to that point is a lot of folks watching it only had the media to give you the story.
Yeah.
Right? If you didn't know anyone who was there, a parent, a cousin, somebody that went to school with these boys and knew their background, knew their intentions, knew where they wanted to go, knew that they weren't in trouble, then all you see is the media. You see these ads that were taken out.
And I was just going to say that to that point, this was pre-internet.
Yep.
So the general population is really heavily dependent at that time on newspapers.
Yep.
And whatever is on the front page of the newspaper is gospel. And that's the story, that's what happened, that's the truth. And it was extremely influential in the way this entire case played out, because you didn't have those other perspectives. You didn't have the perspectives of the lay people on the ground or the people protesting on behalf of these kids outside of the courthouse. And you didn't have the perspective of the parents, because there's no Twitter, there's no Facebook, there's no Instagram. And so we really, to millions of people, were just sold a narrative that was really a one-track narrative the entire time.
I'd like to think that today would be so different because of the social media that we have. But I also really recognize that the question is, what do you see when you see our black and brown boys?
Yeah.
What do you see? And if we challenge ourselves with that question, I mean, ask ourselves what we see. When you stop at a light and see a group of boys together, what do you automatically assume?
Right.
You know?
And how do you feel?
How do you feel?
Are you automatically afraid? Is that your first feeling? Is it fear? Is it admiration? Is it love? You know? And I think the way that you feel, if you can answer that question for yourself, just it says a lot. And I think it really is going to speak to a lot of the issues that we're going to get into tonight.
Absolutely. I think one of the things too that resonated with me as soon as I saw it was, I do have a son. And the tears started coming out of me as a mother, and these young boys, 14 and 16 years old, are there without their parents, an adult, and really saying, where's my mom? Shouldn't my mom be here? And the coercion of the police to say, it's, you know, if you're innocent, then there's not an issue. Like, come on and talk to us. You can get out of here, and all, you know, no food. And so things like that, what is still happening? So I'm just really excited to talk to our guests coming up.
That's one of the thoughts I had too, is I need to speak to my son immediately.
And, you know, my son is only 7, but watching that with him and have him answer questions and say, why are they doing that? And to really start this conversation now is so important. And that's a good question too, is, are you watching these shows with your child? How young is too young? And I remember telling some friends that I watched this with Walker, and he went to school and told his teacher that he watched this because actually I think she said that there were 4, and he's like, no, there were 5. And which is great, right? It's great because he was in tune, but I remember having some conversation saying, I can't believe you let your son watch that. And let's talk about it. How young is too young? For me, this is a perfect age to begin the conversations because it's real life.
And I think a lot of parents also would be leaning towards shielding their kids from this because, like you said, they would be under the impression that that's too young. But in this case, the youngest was 14. So, you know, that it can happen.
It can happen. So one of the questions, and please write in, hi Marcia from Jamaica, good to see you. One of the things that I do want to ask is, what type of things should we be talking to our children about now? Just based off of what he's seeing in the court system and what he's seen across, you know, the years that he's been an attorney. So
that's great.
When we come back, we are going to be introducing attorney Dwight Pettit of Baltimore, a notable Baltimore attorney, and we're so excited to have him tonight. So when we're back, please send in your questions. We're on Facebook Live as well as YouTube.
And if you're watching live, share so other people can tune into. We'll be right back.
A minute and listen to this flashback of the Black by Demand radio show.
They said she wouldn't so they didn't know if she had a weapon. So it's just a mess. So yeah, you do have to have these discussions with your children.
You do. And you have to make them aware of that there is an enemy out there. Every time the police pull you over, or every time you have an interaction with the police as a black person, you are at risk of being in front of your enemy. Hopefully, it's not a police officer that wants to demonstrate that he's your enemy, but we all see it's a high probability of that being the case. So if we're not talking to our children do not have the coping mechanisms to deal with these type of intense situations. What they're going to do is what most of us do as black people, me and anyone else, which is become emotional. And that is the trigger point for the police. They know that black people are emotional people. So when they arrive on the scene, they are purposely trying to say and do things to you to get your emotions up, right? And then once they get your emotions up, then it's like, oh, that's what we needed. Now we're going to kick your ass. You know what I'm saying? Gotcha. You know, so I'm saying we need to have these discussions with our children, you know, and make them understand in this day and age, and it's every day and age really, but we'll just say this day and age for the sake of it being so prevalent on social media, like you have to understand what you're getting yourself into. And I think a lot of us as black people are just scared to still tell our children that there are a group of people out here that are your enemies.
Join us every Monday at 12 noon for Black by Demand radio show, only on BeExposedRadio.com.
Whatever happened to the times when we cared for one another? We shared the same respect. What is happening? We're trading what's important for shiny things. I can't allow this blasphemy. It's blasphemy. Why would you treat yourself like that? We didn't come this far just to fall right back. Don't lose yourself, stay on track. Baby, you're a god. Baby, you're a god. Believe that. Full of the things that we've overcome. Full of unspoken battles we've won. You're so much better than that. Sometimes.
Hey, there's my son. You've been in your room all morning.
Hey, Dad.
Matt, what's wrong with your voice?
There is nothing wrong with my voice.
Oh, well, it's just sort of.
I have been playing my video game and electronic game for so many hours.
Well, it sounds like it might be time for you to take a break, or...
Hello, Dad.
Susan?
I have been watching TV and text messaging all morning. Yay, electronics. Yay, yay, yay.
Guys, I think it's about time to get in the car and take a little trip. Maybe see some trees, some green things.
What are these green things you speak of?
This weekend, unplug. Take your family to the forest. There's nothing in the world like experiencing nature firsthand. Trees, paths, bluebirds, streams. Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. To find the forest nearest you, go to discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Get out to the forest and discover the wonders of nature with your family, just like Blue, Jewel, and the whole Rio flock.
Let the kids connect to their roots. It's gonna be so much fun. Yeah! Woo-hoo!
Let's rock this jungle.
Yeah!
Fresh air.
What a glorious morning!
Clean water.
Woohoo! This is great!
And endless surprises.
Yo, this is untapped territory.
How amazing!
Visit discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
So when you get to the corner of Smith and Orchard, you're going to want to take a left.
You are not going to.
Then what you're going to do is turn onto Marcy
Avenue.
Just
broke up
and go past the first 3 lights,
happy
and then
about
take the next left.
I don't really
then
think
drive 5
she's
more
happy,
blocks,
but
and you should be
who
there.
am I to judge, right?
Park on the
Anyway,
right.
That's
I'll
what
see
I
you
heard
later
last
tonight.
night.
It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This message is for all of you sitting in the passenger seat, and apologies if it gets a little uncomfortable.
You are listening to BeExposedRadio.com.
Hey right, and welcome back. We are so excited that you are joining us. For Now We Are Talking, and we wanted to introduce our special guest today, which is the notable attorney in Baltimore, Attorney Pettit. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Lolita.
Absolutely.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. So Mervin and I, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, and Mervin?
Yes.
Oh,
Good to
sure,
be with
absolutely.
you too.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So we have two attorneys around the table, so I have to make sure I position my questions properly, exactly what I'm looking to know. But we, just to recap for those of you guys that are just joining us, we, as you all as well, have just been so in tune with the latest miniseries on Netflix, which brings back questions and just feelings about the Central Park 5 case. And we reached out and said, hey, not only do we want to talk about the case, but we want to delve deeper and talk about just the criminal justice system, and who better to have on than Attorney Pettit. So we are going to be breaking it down into 4 different segments. The first is police aggression and arrest, the court system and bail, juvenile detention and parole, and incarceration. These are the same 4 segments that Ava DuVernay actually broke down the miniseries. So take it away, Mervin. Let's do an intro.
Yes, so tonight we have with us really a legend, and we're so honored to have him here. He's going to be such a wealth of knowledge, and you're probably literally a walking encyclopedia when it comes to criminal law. But welcome tonight, Attorney Pettit, who's also the author of Under Color of Law, The Story of an American Family. He's been practicing law for over 40 years, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Pushing 50.
Wow.
Congratulations.
50.
Thank you.
So that's a lot of years fighting for people and defending people's rights. And you started off earlier in your career as a public defender.
Well, before that, I was with the Small Business Administration in Washington, D.C., believe it or not, in the Nixon administration. And I was, my first assignment was to defend the attacks on affirmative action.
Look at that.
And amazingly, affirmative action is actually still under attack.
Yes, it has been, and has been, they've pecked away at it constantly, so it's nothing like what it originally started out to be.
Right. And
it's been diluted.
Yes, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell our guests a little bit about yourself as well as your book.
Well, I came out of Howard Law, and from Howard undergraduate. As I indicated, was recruited to the Small Business Administration. In both the national office, I was the second black attorney in the national office, and then to the local office, and then I came home to Baltimore, which was always my original intent, and joined the public defender as I opened my practice. At that point in time, it was Mitchell and Pettit, Mitchell, Pettit, Davidson, Gilden, and Mitchell and Pettit, which was a very young and aggressive law firm that was not only involved in terms of the criminal law, was very much involved in constitutional law and winning some of the biggest cases at that particular time in the Baltimore, Maryland area. I had argued a big case coming into Baltimore. My father challenged the United States, and the case was Pettit versus the United States, which went all the way up to the U.S. Court of Claims, which was a discrimination case. It's one of the first cases in the nation to order back pay for federal employees and determine what discrimination was in terms of what you had to prove in terms of a court of law. That was a major case and went up to the Supreme Court, but was settled before argued in the Supreme Court. And so I came to Baltimore with that background and immediately was pulled into a lot of constitutional cases, which the firm handled. From there, I eventually went on my own, and part of my litigation experience was as the plaintiff, before I even get to the case with my father, was Pettit versus the Board of Education of Harford County. I was the first African-American male to integrate the schools in Harford County. So in my book, I talk about the triumvirate, the Pettit versus the United States, Pettit versus the Board of Education of Harford County, and believe it or not, Pettit versus the Board of Law examiners in Maryland, because at that time we're not passing black lawyers one at a time.
And what decade is this? 19 what?
I brought that suit in the 1970s, and that was the first case. Pettit versus the Board of Education was in the 50s, and my lawyers in that case, which sort of inspired me to be a lawyer, were Thurgood Marshall, Jack Greenberg, Bonita Jackson Mitchell, one of the greatest lawyers to come out of Maryland, and it was a heck of a team. And so that sort of inspired me with them being my lawyers. My father always indicated he wanted to go further. He was an engineer, but he wanted to go further and become a lawyer. So I was sort of inspired as a child to go to law school and become a lawyer, so I could not only be an activist, but would have the tools to, in fact, correct injustices. And so that brought me, as I said, back to Baltimore. I dabbled with politics and things like that. I was the first African-American chairman in the United States for the Jimmy Carter campaign. I was his co-chairman in the state, was nominated by him, put forth to be the first black United States attorney in the country. And even though that didn't happen for political reasons, I went back to my practice and handled, as the book indicates, many criminal cases, police brutality, and constitutional cases, as well as civil rights. As here lately, because of police brutality and what has taken place in this country, my practice has really been devoted to constitutional issues in terms of police brutality. In 2004, I won the largest verdict in the country, $104 million, $5 million for police brutality. Didn't say I collected it, but I won it. And right after that, we had several other verdicts in the millions of dollars. And so that is where my practice has been recently, more so in criminal law, personal injury, accidents and what have you, and constitutional law in terms of police brutality.
Wow.
Well, you are beyond a wealth of knowledge. I mean, you had so many firsts that you just named, which is totally amazing. When you talk about mentors and those folks that gave you inspiration, those are people that we see in history books. So not only did they make history, but you have made history. So again, we're so excited, and when we come back, we're just going to jump right into it. I know folks really are looking forward to connecting the knowledge that you have with the current case. There's so many questions, and we have questions. So send in your questions, and we'll be right back.
Yeah. Now we're talking.
Exchange Radio Show every Friday 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. every Saturday 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Real artist, real talk, real live on BeExposedRadio.com. I was meeting with a friend yesterday, and I've gotten to the point where don't ask me a question because the truth is going to come out. And
exactly.
Just don't do it.
If you ain't looking for the truth, don't come to me.
Don't do it because I can't hold my tongue. And she wants to be this stylist, boutique, but you're not doing anything in that nature, and I can't take you seriously if you're not doing those things. And I understood why people didn't take me seriously, because I found myself in somebody else's lane. I was good at what I was doing and what I wanted to be, but I wasn't doing it for me. So how can I ask you to take me seriously if I'm living in somebody else's shoes?
And nobody can do what you do, and I think that that's a big problem that people face now. Like, you see what somebody else is doing and you want to do that when that's not your lane.
That's not your lane.
That's not what you're supposed to be doing.
But it's popular, it's getting that person money, it's getting that person applause. Oh, I want applause. I want money. Let me stand over here behind them.
And then a lot of times people aren't honest with themselves either. Like, I was thinking earlier today, I've been woke for almost 2 days, so so you get honesty, and I was thinking, like,
The Artist Exchange Radio Show.
First they love you, then desert you, leave with a plate full with no spoon. It ain't no space, I can't escape negativity. I got used to the taste, I've been bad, burned, then fucked over. But remain strong through the Passover. Kicking haters out of the way like masked over. Roll up, sip something, let it pass over. Who would I be? It ain't the man to me that let the next man take advantage of me. When that storm come, no pan I see. Get with it, not without it, then you'll see. I beat the haters, they know I'm greater. That's why they bustin' for that.
You are listening to BeExposedRadio.com.
welcome back. And now we are talking. We are here with a special guest, Attorney Dwight Pettit, who has so many amazing accomplishments. We're so excited to have him. And tonight we're not only talking about the Central Park 5, but we're going to use their stories, which are at the forefront of everybody's minds now with this new amazing docuseries. But we're going to talk about, I think this segment, police aggression and arrest. And with a criminal background, you can definitely talk to us about it. Some of the things that jumped out at me is that you talked about this constitutional background that you've had, as well as police brutality. What stuck out with you just hearing those things and hearing about police aggression and arrest stuck out with the movie?
Right. So one of the things that repeatedly stuck out for me, I practice in Washington, D.C., and a lot of the violations that I saw just seemed so outrageous in terms of things that I've never seen happen, things that I couldn't believe were a regular course of business in terms of the way law enforcement operate. For example, not recording interviews.
Yes.
So just, a lot of times you take for granted that the way things are done today, that's the way they've always been done. But I'm sure Attorney Pettit knows even way better than I do that there was a time where interrogations were not recorded. There was a time where the police got away with things that today would seem egregious, but there was a time, and even I would argue in many parts of the country, it's currently still the case. There are regular, routine constitutional violations in terms of the way investigations are conducted, the way interrogations are conducted. And in this case, right from the beginning, in terms of the events leading up to the interrogation, there were just so many things done wrong and so many violations of constitutional rights. It was really just eye-opening for me.
Yeah, for me too. Just police brutality from the onset, the aggression that the police had when they were questioning. So, Attorney Pettit, can you talk to us about what are our constitutional rights if we're ever picked up by the police?
Well, let me start off, if I may, and back up a little bit. You all are sitting in a city at this point in time that is infamous for violation of constitutional rights by police. In fact, we are under consent decree put forth by the Department of Justice under the Obama administration that is now in effect, and the law enforcement in this state operates, and the city's operating under that consent decree.
And for those of our viewers that don't know what a consent decree is, could you shed some light?
Well, basically, the Department of Justice came in and did an investigation in a long memorandum and findings, hundreds of pages. They found that people's violations of their constitutional rights were violated almost as a norm rather than the abnorm in Baltimore City, that the police had total disregard for the constitutional rights of citizens. I worked with the Department of Justice as well as other lawyers. In fact, at that time, I had about 50 cases that I turned over to the Department of Justice in terms of wrongful deaths, shootings, beatings, etc. Now, you have to realize before you get to the question of what should a person do, let's back up and understand that a lot of things that are taking place now because of technology were not afforded to persons a few years ago. And so body cameras and videos, which we didn't have. So in many cases when I would try something, or try cases, the police would, the tremendous line that they use all the time is that they were in fear for their life. They thought they saw a weapon, or they thought they saw this or that, and therefore they, under their way of thinking, they were allowed to shoot and kill.
And that's still happening.
It's still happening.
The line that's
the only difference is that now the things that I was arguing to a jury 15 years ago, people automatically, believe it or not, would want to believe the police because they want to believe that the police are honest and protecting them. And so many cases, people talk about the cases that I won, but many cases we lost because juries, even minority juries, would side with the police once the police put on this prefabrication of fear for their lives. And so this development of seeing some opportunity to have civil remedies, even if not criminal remedies, even though we have a state's attorney here, Miss Marilyn Mosby, who did prosecute certain police in terms of Freddie Gray killing a few years ago, and that was a breakthrough. That was unique, but she did the right thing, regardless of whether they were acquitted or not. So this is not something that's new. This is something that has been rampant, not just in certain parts of the country, Mervin, but all over the country, and right here in Maryland, as you said, right, D.C. and what have you. And so it's something that's been abated to a certain extent because we do have video cameras. We do now have cameras on the streets where people are able to take pictures of what's taking place, and so it's put it in a new perspective. But that hasn't alleviated the difficulty, because what has happened, the courts have moved, as well as the legislative bodies, to protect the police. So we find all kind of laws that have been passed, and judges and courts and so forth, that exonerate the police both criminally as well as civilly. So we're still up against a major systemic operation to in fact allow the police to continue in our communities more so as an occupation force rather than a protective force. And so as to your question, your initial question, what do you do when confronted by the police? You do what you're told to do. You keep your hands on the steering wheel. You say, officer, yes, no. If he asks you to step out, you step out, because you got to remember, he has the gun, he has the stick, he has the mace, and as my book says, under color of law, he has the statutory legal authority with the badge. And so it's a no-win situation in that particular instance. And if you do something which is a sudden move to get your license or to go to your glove compartment, I've had that experience. I've had the actual experience of having a gun to my head while the police officer told me did I have a gun in the car, and to get it if I did. And I told him he had to be crazy. Right. Because I knew what the deal was and what the setup was. Oh, yeah. And so at this point in time, we have no recourse when stopped on the streets or driving while black, what have you. We have no recourse but to cooperate and obey the police officer. If we're going to have a recourse, that recourse has to come in a court of law subsequent to what the stop is concerning.
What's your opinion?
That's real life.
Okay, what is your opinion on the advent of body-worn cameras and recorded interrogations and just the technology that's been infused into the criminal justice system? Do you think it's been a good thing or not a good thing?
Well, I think recorded interrogations are absolutely a good thing. And body cameras, because what they're trying to do is limit the usage of body cameras. In other words, we find now that doing discovery and so forth, we have to file it under the Information Act and what have you. Police departments are very reluctant to in fact give you those cameras and the videos, and because in many cases we believe that they are possibly altered or destroyed and what have you. And we have laws that are being developed now. This new police commission has set down certain regulations in Baltimore to govern the release of video and body cameras. But those things that shouldn't even be an issue. Right, exactly. I mean, that's the cameras in many cases don't lie, and in some cases they exonerate the police. So they should be overjoyed to release those cameras in terms of getting to truth and veracity of what's really happening. Right. But no, they're still stubborn about that, and it's an issue.
What can we do? Assume someone is being pulled over and we do have technology at our fingertips to record. What words should we be saying to say, hey, I'm recording this because...
See, I have great problems with that,
okay,
because I really believe you put yourself in jeopardy.
When you go reach for something, or where's the jeopardy?
The jeopardy when you say I'm recording, or when you, even in the situation where you're saying, let me have your name and your badge number. You've got to realize that officer, if he's overly aggressive, he's going to respond or react in a negative way. So those things, these recordings and what have you, I said, let that be done by onlookers and people who are approaching the scene. Let that identification process take place some other way. Don't put yourself in harm's way by acting as if you, even though you're right and may have done anything wrong, but to try to litigate that as an issue on the streets in the dark of night or something like that is just putting yourself in jeopardy for a needless situation. And so I tell folks all the time, you may have to be humble right then, but let that pass and call back to the sergeant after the stop is over. And I was stopped on so and so street. Who is the officer? What's his badge number?
So
but not there.
is
Right.
your caution to people is deal in the moment and obey,
Right.
because they have
All the power.
the power.
Mhm.
Right. Okay, I hear you. Just want to make sure I was clear. I know a couple of people probably are thinking like, hey, we have technology at our fingertips. And what you see now is so many Instagrams or Facebook Lives in these
Mhm.
situations. And I think what you said is, hey, you don't know who you're getting as this police officer.
Mhm.
And you don't want to already be on the defensive because of everything that's going on. And these thoughts, we talked about this before too. You're telling yourselves all of these stories without really going through them right now. So be in that moment and then make sure you can.
You don't know whether you have officer friendly
Yes.
or officer bad guy.
Yes.
You have no way of knowing at that particular time.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Same when you come and you call a police officer to your house. I've had more people who, I've got a case now that's getting ready to be tried in Baltimore County, where a young man, he called the police and said, I'm in mental distress. He was paranoid. Police came to his house and ended up beating him to death. And that's getting ready to come to trial in federal court now as we talk in Baltimore County. And, you know, he wasn't armed, didn't do anything aggressive. He called them for help.
So is that a civil case or a criminal?
That's a civil case because they didn't charge the police. And but that's the kind of things that can occur when you, as the citizen, are exercising your constitutional rights, and you become all of a sudden the victim.
Yeah.
We have the tape of this young man being beaten to death, and why he's being beaten to death. No video, but we got the tape because he was on the phone saying, "Please don't kill me."
So you have the audio.
We have the audio. But it's just horrible when you think of these things happening today in the modern ages with all the technology and what have you. It hasn't abated anything. It hasn't stopped anything. And this president, when this president says to the nation and to the police officers and the Fraternal Order of Police, I got your back. Don't worry about them while you're arresting them and what have you. All that does is perpetuate that aggressive type of violence from the police departments.
Well, unfortunately, the I have your back is not demonstrated every single day in what he does or tweets. So aside from getting into a huge political discussion, I think exactly what you're saying is spot on. And not only did we see the president talking about him now, but we also saw it in the what his position was way back then.
Exactly.
You know? And people not even realizing that somebody like that can get into office, right? He'll have his 15 minutes of fame and it'll be over, and where are we now, right? So with that being said, we did talk about police. So for those of you guys that are just joining us, welcome. We are here with our notable attorney Pettit of Baltimore, and we are so excited to have him. But we are not only talking to Central Park 5, but we are talking about the criminal justice system. And our first segment was really talking about police aggression and arrest. And just recapping, I think what you really are encouraging us to do is, if in fact you're stopped by the police, they have all the power. So you need to listen, you need to obey. I think you said no sudden moves. Listen to exactly what's happening and obey.
Exactly.
When you come back is afterwards, and you can, this is where I was stopped. I think you said, what else did you say? Get there,
you can get the badge number, the identification number, if somebody has a camera and people, we have cases where people who have been bystanders, who pulled out cameras, who have been, the beating has transferred to them, or the aggression is transferred to them. And the camera's taken, smashed, and what have you. So you got to be very careful as to, as you indicated at the moment, what your safety is versus your constitutional rights. Because you might have constitutional rights, but that doesn't do you any good if you're dead.
Absolutely. So being in the moment, that's a big one. No, thank you. That's good. We are also going to talk the court system in bail. You want to do a Facebook check to see if anybody's written in. I just want to make sure we're getting questions as well, or answering them if they're coming in. But alongside those were the court system in bail. One of the things that kind of stood out at me inside of the docuseries was when it came to the court system. Obviously everyone knows the judge has all the power, but really seeing it right there and how much power and how much the media, these children were convicted even before they went into trial, you know? And so when we talk about the court system, what's some guidance that you have? You have a lawyer, right? What's some guidance that you have around just navigating the court system in the bail?
Well, we know that the court system is a very unjust system in terms of the people that are incarcerated, and the fact that minorities basically are the persons who are imprisoned in America. And so the best thing that you can do in terms of your encounter with the criminal justice system is retain counsel. The next thing you can do is remain silent. Yes. And there is nothing that you can say or do, even though the police might say, talk to us and we're going to go, it's going to go light on you, I'm going to put in some, that's all, excuse my expression, BS. Your responsibility at that time is to remain silent, say nothing, get a good lawyer, and let him, in fact, handle anything that might involve an interrogation, the bail situation. Now, the bail situation is something that is in transition right now in national politics as well as local politics, because bail is supposed to be, they're defining bail now, is whether or not you're a danger to the society if you're released, and whether or not you will appear for trial. Right. But before that, all other things, a lot of other things were considered bail, because bail was a multi-million-dollar industry in terms of paying a bail bondsman 10%, and the bail bondsman putting up the bail, the collateral to have you released. Well, the courts are sort of mixed now, because they're saying you shouldn't be, the courts shouldn't be considering that. So what you might think might relax bails, now judges are just saying, well, you're a danger to society because you were charged, so therefore no bail. Instead of giving a monetary bail, it sort of worked in reverse, right, so that you're a flight risk, but the main thing, you being a danger to society, I have no standards now to impose a cash bail, and so therefore I'm going to deny any bail. And so, you know, the judges have tremendous power locally, federally, citywide, statewide, and bail is something that is now being argued by the American Civil Liberties Union and other national organizations as to whether or not this in itself at the beginning of the criminal justice system is a violation of constitutional rights to be held without the opportunity to in fact post a reasonable bail.
Well, when we're back, no, thank you for that. So many questions came to mind. I'm going to jot them down on our commercial break. But when we're back, we are going to jump right back into the court system. You gave us two good nuggets just then. And we're just going to be talking Central Park 5 as well as the criminal justice system altogether. And now we're talking with Mervin and Lolita.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Like, the one thing you always gotta remember is people gonna try to project their insecurities onto you. But you can't listen to what them niggas saying. You gotta get out here and do your shit regardless. You gonna do what you love for the rest of your life anyway. So why not turn that shit into something? Be a man of everything you say. This shit bigger than me, man. Like, yeah, I'm good and all that, but you know what I mean? I ain't shit without y'all. So no matter what you up to, just go hard. Don't matter. Can you imagine how I really having nothing is? Stomach growling, you ain't got no food in the fridge. Surviving on a jail diet of water and bread. No father figure, that's cause my father dead. Mom bringing different niggas in and out the crib. No money, so you seen it's less than all your friends. But it a joke because your mother was a crackhead. Older sister hoeing off, giving all the homies head. I could wait for your response, but they let it hit me.
Whoa. The moment my son saw a redwood tree.
It's huge!
Is the moment I knew that for him,
You can't even see the top of that thing!
even the sky has no limit.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org. Learn about forests near you and discover cool things to do when you go. Your moment is out there. Find it at discovertheforest.org.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council. Are tuned in to BeExposedRadio.com.
So we were talking about critical thinking. So we definitely believe that critical thinking is one of the first things we need to start implementing, not just simply being told things. Or how about this? You know, we tend to listen to people who get assigned certain positions.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So when they have certain positions, we tend to think that it's truth attached to that because of their position, right?
Right.
Is that always the case, though?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
That's
It's probably one of the biggest reasons we should be doing some critical thinking.
Yes, I agree. I definitely.
This is a Poverty ENT exclusive.
You are listening to BeExposedRadio.com.
Welcome back to Now We're Talking with Mervin and Lolita and our special guest, attorney, legend in criminal law in the state of Maryland, Mr. Dwight Pettit. We've been having an amazing discussion so far about the criminal justice system, about constitutional rights, and about the Central Park Five, and we're just really honored to have Mr. Pettit as a guest with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
We've talked so many things. I think the beginning we talked police aggression and arrest. For those of you guys that are now just joining, feel free to comment on any questions that you have. We have a couple of watch parties up, so just go ahead and shoot them to us and we'll definitely try to answer them while you have Attorney Pettit with us. So we talked police aggression and arrest and what we should be talking to our children to do. I have a 7-year-old. I have family members, obviously, who black and brown community, and more we're seeing this topic of police brutality, of, you know, the body camera showing, sometimes defending the police, which is wonderful, but other times really showing something different. You know, some of the nuggets that you've given us already is that police could be aggressive. Not all policemen are aggressive or policewomen are aggressive, but some things you should do is just in the moment, be in that moment and obey. What are they asking you to do? Put your hands up. Don't give anybody a reason to come at you with any force. You want to make sure that you're present and you're attentive, and then afterwards is when you want to start asking those questions about who is the police officer, what's his badge number. I think another couple things you just said too is retain counsel and remain silent. We talk your rights, right? Those are your rights, which work for you.
And if you can't retain counsel, you have a public defender, which is available to most people who are indigent. So the main thing is have a lawyer present and volunteer nothing and make no statements, remain silent. And what the police should advise you, which is not always the case under Miranda, which is the standard in American jurisprudence, that your right to a lawyer and your right to remain silent. That's supposed to be laid out for you. If you don't want a lawyer, you can refuse, but you have a definite right to exercise your constitutional right to remain silent and have counsel.
One of the questions I think people might have is, all right, your Miranda rights are laid out for you, so you do have the right to remain silent, but you're in this room with these police that then say, but if you have nothing to hide, let's just talk about it, right? Why do you need your lawyer here in order to talk about those things? So what do you say to the person who's nervous that if they don't say exactly what happened, that now they're being found guilty already?
Well, the main thing is when you're in interrogation, there's nothing you can say that's going to help you. So anything you say, as the Miranda warning says, is going to be used against you. So if you think about it, there's no motivation to say anything. They are not your friends. They are there to, in fact, get a conviction and get a statistic. And so why is there even an issue or debate if the police officer gets you some coffee and gets you some cookies and I'm your friend and tell me what the deal is and I'm going to help you and we're going to roll over and do that. That's all
not true.
That's not true.
Right, exactly. No, BS is fine. But I love that. I love that you said that, because what I was asking is what people are thinking is, why don't I just go ahead and tell them exactly what happened? But you put it right on the line. Folks are not your friends. We don't have the same goal in mind here, right? So I thought that was good.
Yeah, that is very interesting. What I would add as a caveat to that, looking at it from both perspectives, is that I think that what you just said is true to a degree. It's only true to the degree that the officers or detectives that you're dealing with, it really depends on their personal integrity. And unfortunately, you don't know when you're speaking to police or speaking to a detective, you don't know the integrity of that person. So you don't know if you're speaking to someone that legitimately, and really it's not even about, being friendly really, but it's really just about the truth. And so if you're dealing with law enforcement that their goal is the truth and what actually happened, then you'll be in a different position than if you're dealing with someone that's chasing stats.
But should it be up to me to try to decipher who I'm dealing with?
Well, see, that's the problem. Right. There really is no way for you to know
absolutely.
that.
Assume the negative.
That's
the best
right. So I just wanted to, in terms of the nuance, it's not that we're trying to say that law enforcement are evil.
Oh, absolutely.
As a blanket statement. But what I think the point is to know is that you really have no way of knowing for sure what kind of a person you're dealing with or what the integrity level of the person is that you're dealing with. And so if you're in a position where you're being advised or you've been advised by a legend in the things that we're talking about and someone who has a tremendous amount of expertise in what we're talking about, then you'd be better off taking their advice.
Absolutely. I think so. And that's the advice that I would give, to my son as well. I think we live in a society which has shown us that we have more reason to be silent and secure a lawyer than we do to just give up everything that we think can help us. Because sometimes the more we talk, the more it sounds, which we also saw, is the more you talk, the more it kind of confuses you just based off the question.
In many cases, you don't know what you're saying, whether it's incriminating or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you have no idea.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you don't even know whether that police officer you're talking to is going to be the one that is used in the prosecution. That thing is being recorded.
Oh,
that could
fair
be
point,
used at any particular time.
So I know it's really quick and we're already back off to commercial break. When stuff is getting really juicy, send in your questions and we'll be right back to talk juvenile detention and parole as well as incarceration. When we're back, now we're talking.
You use Tearless baby shampoo because it's gentle on your baby's eyes. You make sure his toys don't have any sharp edges. You always test the bathwater to make sure it's not too hot. You taught her what to do when the smoke alarm goes off. You make sure she wears a helmet when she rides her bicycle. You put on his sunscreen, even when he's embarrassed his friends will see. You do so much to keep your child safe. But are you using the right car seat for your child? Is your child facing the right way in the car seat? Is the seat too big or too small? How do you know when it's time to move your child into the next type of seat? Car crashes are a leading killer of children ages 1 to 13. Protect your child's future at every stage of life. For information on the right seat for your child, visit safercar.gov/therightseat. That's safercar.gov/therightseat.
A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Having trouble finding Connor's middle school? Would you like directions?
No, why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Finding lowest airfare to Istanbul.
No, I'm tired of fighting with him over homework.
Home, walk, restaurant. Need a review?
No, I need help. He's very smart, but his mind wanders. He's disorganized.
I think I understand.
Oh, good.
Finding best potatoes for French fries.
No!
Russet, fingerling, Yukon Gold.
Why don't you understand me?
Sorry, I was trying to show how Connor feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
For the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues, this is what life can feel like. Explore understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues, designed to help your child thrive in school and in life. Understood.org, because understanding is everything.
Brought to you by understood.org and the Ad Council.
Join the Just a Bit Outside crew every Monday, 8 to 10 p.m. on beexposedradio.com.
You want to start off?
I think I'll get it out of the way on a who's not.
Okay, do it.
The Orioles.
Right.
They got swept by the Royals. They lost 4 in a row, and the last 5 games have all been decided by 1 run.
Mm-hmm.
The game before, or the last game that they lost before the Royals was the Nationals, and it was Weeders, of course, one with a home run,
hit the home run.
Right. They were going into that national series. It seemed like they were doing so well, and they just crapped out. They got that game postponed, so who knows when they're going to replay that or play that game. That's my first not for the night.
Okay.
You are listening to BeExposedRadio.com.
Welcome back to Now We're Talking with Mervin and Lolita. We are here today having a really interesting discussion about the criminal justice system and the Central Park 5. And we have a very special guest with us today, attorney legend Dwight Pettit. And he's been just really giving us so much information and dropping a lot of jewels on us today about what to do and what not to do, and just information about the criminal justice system in general that everyone needs to know, especially if you have children. So we wanted to get into discussing the juvenile system as it relates to criminal justice. And could you tell us what are the differences, generally speaking, between the juvenile criminal justice system and the criminal justice system for adults?
Well, basically, the adult system is a higher threat of incarceration, and that incarceration being in the adult system. Juvenile has options in terms of programs, counseling, psychiatric help, and other things that are made available in the juvenile system that are not available in the adult system. In most states and jurisdictions, if a person commits a crime which is classified as an adult crime or a crime of a certain serious nature, they can be waived to adult court. And the procedure there is, once they're waived to adult court, then you have what you call reverse waiver. Counsel can go in and argue, because this person is a juvenile with limited exposure to the criminal system, with tender years of no criminal record, that they'd be kicked back, maybe that's the wrong word, but they'd be sent back to the juvenile system. And that's what most criminal lawyers will argue, even for the most heinous charges, to get it back in the juvenile, because in that particular instance, the penalties are much less severe, and you have much more alternatives in terms of sentence disposition than you do in the criminal court.
One of the things that folks saw inside, probably remember if they were following the case back in the 80s, but also saw most recently on a docuseries, was that Corey Wise was the only 16-year-old of the Central Park 5. Everyone else was 14 and 15, super young, and so was 16. And because he was 16 at the time, he was sent to an adult prison. And with that, what you could clearly see inside the movie, I mean, she did such a phenomenal job with this, just really depicting their lives, is how young you are, how inexperienced you are just with life, entering in this environment with grown men who some have done crazy things, right? What are some of the things that are happening now in law, because I don't know, like what's the age that considers you an adult?
Well, it changes with whatever the crime is. Gotcha. I mean, there's a cutoff at 16 or something like that, where it goes back to automatic juvenile. But if it's murder or rape or something like that, then you can be waived into adult court. As I said, you can file petitions to reverse it back. But because of the situation with the crime now, in terms of what the crime is and the penalty. Here in Maryland, we just had a very, very famous case just ended about a month ago, where a police officer was killed during a alleged robbery. It was 4 teenagers involved, and one teenager was in the getaway car and ran over the police officer when she in fact tried to bring him to a stop. And he was found guilty of first-degree felony murder, and that's another whole issue as to why it's felony murder. But the other 3 as juveniles, all under a certain age, because of the fact that they were charged with murder in the first degree, which is a felony, of course, a felony murder it's called. In other words, you don't have to intentionally or premeditation if somebody dies in the commission of a crime. And these 3 who were not involved in the killing, but were involved in the robbery that was taking place collateral to the police officer getting killed, all of them pled out last week and will be sentenced subject to life imprisonment with all suspended but 30 years. So all of those kids are juveniles, but because of the nature of the charge and the seriousness of the charge, they all will go into adult court or in adult court, and nothing was waived back.
I think that's an excellent point, especially for those of us that have children, especially if you have teenagers or even young adults, that if you go and do something that is ultimately deemed a crime, and during that someone happens to die, even if that wasn't your intention when you all went out, it could be, you know, your kid with a group of friends, but if it's a crime, especially if it's a felony like burglary or, you know, robbery or, you know, something, and someone dies, you can be charged with murder.
The law anticipates, you should have anticipated, I mean, the law feels you should have anticipated that was a possibility.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to prove the elements of murder.
Inside, I am just burning inside because of the choices that our children are making every day and not really thinking about the long-term effects. The things that, you know, I remember my parents as I was growing up just always instilling in me, you don't need to follow a crowd. If in fact you're somewhere that you don't feel comfortable, blame us. I remember this just being instilled in me. And just at 14, what are you really thinking? You know, are you really thinking that long term? And you're out with friends, with people you say are friends, not associates, but your friends, and you make these decisions, and that's your life. You know, I remember my parents taking me to court to see exactly how easy it is for a judge to hit a gavel and you are in jail. That's and I remember it affecting me so much.
And the Supreme Court and other courts have said your brain is not even matured enough at those ages to recognize the criminality of your conduct. But that doesn't have anything to do with the charging apparatus of the American justice system.
And I think that also speaks to your earlier question. We were talking off air about how young is too young to introduce these concepts and these discussions to your children. And parents have differing views on that. But I think just the notion that you can be 13, 14, in some states I've seen even lower than that, and be charged with a very serious felony and even be charged as an adult, depending on, you know, what state you're in.
The severity of the crime?
Yes, and so a lot of parents who are thinking, well, my kid's only 13, only 12, only 14, these are not discussions that we really need to have. Or that we live in a safe environment, we live in a good community, whatever that means, and these are not issues that my kid is going to have to deal with. Like, what would you say to those parents and those families who, for instance, live in the county as opposed to the city?
Well, my practice has shown that there is not really any great separation between the criminal activity in the county and city. You'd be surprised the young kids coming from good homes with parents who have good incomes and what have you, who are involved in criminal activity. And so it doesn't always just involve itself in terms of economics of the family or the community and what have you. This crime element in terms of our young people is across all kind of boundaries, geographical and economic boundaries. And it's surprising what you will find sometime in terms of young men and women facing criminal charges who way out in the county and not in the urban environment where that's more acceptable or more expected.
What a lot of people don't realize, this is something that I noticed when I first moved to the area, and where I lived was a very nice area, but I also realized quickly that there were a lot of unsupervised children and a lot of unsupervised teenagers, and it's because in order to live in these nice places, your parents, if you have two parents, they're both working. If you have one parent, they're definitely working, and they're working all the time. And so the same temptations and problems and issues that kids who live in the city can get into, kids who are living in the suburbs are also getting into these same problems because a lot of times they're unsupervised.
And it's interesting, I saw a TED Talk. My cousin showed me a TED Talk. I feel like it was this morning. and it was a gentleman, I forget his name, I feel like it's Curtis Wall Street something, but he
Jackson.
is in Jackson, yes, and he is in San Quentin for 30-something years. And while, you know, he said, as I was growing up, it's my uncle who took me to do a burglary, because leaving home, I feel like it was from jail at that time, leaving home from getting in trouble, we didn't have gas money. So he picked me up and he's like, okay, let's go burglarize here, get us some money to go home. And I say that because some people are living where the only folks around them inside of their network, inside of their circle, are criminals. And that is all you know. And so when he did go to prison, he's in San Quentin now, I believe, is that when he did go to prison, he said, I didn't know how to read. I didn't know how to spell. You know, I barely knew how to talk. And I thought I was picking up a sports page to just kind of look at the pictures, but it ended up being stocks. And the way he got into that was someone said to him, an older gentleman said to him, oh, you play the stocks? And he's like, what is stocks? And he said, that's where rich white people put their money. And he said, that got me interested right there. And he taught himself to read. But all of these things, we talk a lot about your network and surrounding yourself with positive influences. But what do you do when you don't have the right influences around you in order to show you the better things? And I think for us, it's mentoring. If we see someone, you know, our children have friends, right?
Yeah.
We go to the school, hopefully, if we can, mentor.
And some of your children's friends might not have the same support or family structure that your family has. So another great opportunity to be a mentor and an example for someone else's children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, you're not going to save everyone, and nor are you looking to save someone, but I do believe that there's people inside of my life, and I imagine yours, because you've listed a lot of people that were mentors in your life, where something that they did or said gave you a different perspective that helped to shift you. Is there someone in your life that helped to do that for you?
I was just very fortunate. I came out of a very, very strong parental and maternal and paternal. I had just great family that on my mother's side and my father's side, grandparents and what have you. So I had all the correct exposures that a young black male could have had at the time. And in my book I talk about being blessed like that, but I understand that many of us don't have that blessing and opportunity in terms of examples and being surrounded with criminal activity and things that can lead you down the wrong path. But as I said earlier, my father was just such an advocate of justice, and he was a civil rights pioneer. In fact, the book is dedicated to him when he was in his stage of illness, and I told him I would tell our story, and that's one of the things that inspired me to write the book, because he was such a vigorous activist for civil rights and black folk.
And he's looking down there, I'm super proud.
We have a comment from one of our live listeners. He says, Dave says, we absolutely need to be present. We absolutely need to present information to our children relative to police interaction. That said, there also needs to be dialogue relative to the company that you keep and decision making. The company that keeps you.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent
Dave.
point.
I think you hit that right on the head. You know, you are the company that you keep, is what my parents used to say to me. If you don't want what you're doing to end up on the front page of the newspaper, then don't do it. And I know it's easier said than done, but you are right on. These conversations are tough, and children don't want to hear it. But when your friends come over, I remember them sitting us down and saying, hey, let's talk. And they're like, oh, here's your father again. Yep, and listen. But everyone knew the expectation. And so, you know, becoming those parents again and sitting down and saying, hey, let's talk about it. Watching these, I mentioned my son is 7, and he's seen this movie, this docuseries twice, you know, and it's not going to all register because he is only 7. But some of it I'm just hoping does stick by. And, you know, we have a lot of males in our lives that, you know, Mervin's around to be able to answer questions, and hopefully he can go to those people when he doesn't feel comfortable coming to me. So thanks, Dave. Yeah. So is there someone in your life that showed you something as you were growing up that really helped to shift you or shape you?
There were quite a few people. I didn't really know any attorneys, and I didn't have any in my family at all. But there was, in my church, there was a judge, Judge Joseph Greenaway. And so just the idea that I actually know a judge and is someone that looks like someone in my family, that was something that was always in the back of my mind. So while I knew at a pretty young age I wanted to do something related to law enforcement, I just didn't know what. When I got to college and started learning more about political science and how the criminal justice system works and things of that nature, eventually I was led down to the path of law, but always in the back of my mind, just knowing that there was someone I knew and that I saw growing up who was black and who was a judge is something that was subconsciously very instrumental in my decision to enter law.
Well, great. So when we come back, we are going to recap and then talk about incarceration. More to come. Now we're talking.
Tired of lane, I'm exhausted. Poppin' Zanny's ass, sipping out the faucet. I'm confused, don't know what I'm doing. Wait, what I'm doing? Got me going, where the f I'm going? Out of space, where I'm going? Wait, where I'm going? Wait, where I'm going? Out of space, where I'm going? Out of space, where I'm going? I'll be up.
Driving has a rhythm all its own. Don't wreck it with a text. Before you get behind the wheel, silence your phone. Or better yet, designate a texter. For more text-free driving tips, visit stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin' Street? Girlin' Street!
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Take a minute and listen to this flashback of the It Is What It Is radio show.
Viral. Make sure y'all share us. So,
please.
Miss Entice.
All right,
Miss
I got
Vicious.
Okay.
Vicious.
Favorite place to have sex outside the bedroom?
Anywhere.
Oh, that's not an answer.
That's not an answer?
Specific. Outside of the bedroom.
You mean where have I?
No. Like where is the spot you like to have outside of the bedroom?
I'm keep it real. I'm not a forest fucker, so I'd rather be in behind closed doors. But I've had sex.
I mean,
outside.
you still can keep it. Under the roof. I'm just saying outside of the bedroom. Yeah, outside of the bed, like not in the bed.
Living room.
Oh, okay.
Living room.
What about the living room?
The couch.
Okay, what position?
Then from the couch, you can roll onto in my case, I had carpet, so you can move from the couch to the floor. Then if you really want to get creative, you could go over to the sink in the kitchen and the aisle.
So what kind of carpet was it? Was it the plush kind? Was it the Stainmaster?
It was plush.
Chinchilla.
It was plush.
It was the plush.
But I got one of them other mats over, like a little area rug.
So it's nice and cushiony.
It was cushiony.
Oh.
Easy on the rug burns.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Now you did mention the kitchen.
You are listening to BeExposedRadio.com.
Partying outside.
Hi, welcome back to Now We're Talking. We are just having so much fun here. So today is a spectacular day. It feels like I'm down, but I'm not really down. I know I'm always full of energy. It's more the topic really just has me thinking. So I'm doing a lot of introspective. We are talking today not only about the Central Park 5 and the injustices that they saw, which has brought to light, what do you see when you see black and brown boys, girls, minorities, in this case boys? And so we're so proud to have Attorney Pettit with us today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And he has just an enormous wealth of knowledge from the criminal law perspective. For those of you just joining us, hello. We have talked police aggression and arrest. We have talked the court system and bail. We have talked juvenile detention. We didn't talk parole really, but we're talking incarceration in this segment.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is you've dealt with cases with high profile people. I saw Mike Tyson in your bio. I saw Ray Lewis. And you've also had probably hundreds of cases with regular, ordinary, everyday citizens. Is there a big difference in how you approach cases with a celebrity versus with a regular person, and in just how you defend the case? Is there a difference?
Well, with the celebrities in the book that I talk about, Ray Lewis and Mike Tyson, those were cases that I was representing the plaintiffs.
Okay.
In terms of civil actions against them for certain things that were alleged to have taken place.
Okay.
With Ray, an incident in a nightclub, and with Mike Tyson, the same thing. In a DC nightclub, in fact. And we were successful in resolving the case with Mike Tyson, and with Ray, I'm a big fan of Ray Lewis, but we went all the way to jury trial, and he at the time was Hall of Fame, on his way to the Hall of Fame, and was the MVP for I always say, the difference between Ray Lewis and Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson had lost the heavyweight championship, and Ray Lewis was the MVP for the Super Bowl, so we lost the case to Ray. But it was fascinating. But yes, we approach him differently. Especially, we've had a lot of high-profile criminal cases and what have you, with a lot of media attachment to it, and you sort of prepare with that understanding that everything that you do and everything that you say and everything that happens, that the media is on top of. But otherwise, on one side, it's a civil case where you're talking about a preponderance of the evidence. The other side is a criminal case where you're talking about beyond a reasonable doubt. So they're two completely different standards. And a lot of lawyers don't try to wear two hats. I was fortunate enough to be able to do both in my career, criminal and civil.
As we talk about incarceration, some of us have family members that are incarcerated. Some of us know people who are incarcerated. And one of the things that the mini-series was able to do is not only show incarceration from a person's perspective and how they're feeling, particularly being so young, but also when you come out, of prison, whether you're exonerated or your time is done, how do you navigate back into society successfully? So can you talk to us about where the law stands with that?
Well, see, we have to realize that, in my opinion, the criminal justice system has been gauged to almost, in fact, be a continuation of a form of slavery. If you look back in terms of the Civil War, when the slaves were freed and they needed people to work the fields and so forth, they came up with a lot of criminal statutes. It was called peonage, which forced people, if you didn't pay a debt of $1, if you didn't do this, if you didn't have they call it vagrancy, you were locked up and forced to work on plantations where before the slaves had done all the labor. But the situation perpetuated itself in terms of free labor, and this is carried over into our justice system as to why it's so inequitable. And so if you look at when we talk about now, we're going to deal with this in terms of the upcoming presidential election, but when you talk about reforming the justice system, you got to realize that back in the 70s and the 80s, when they came up with mandatory sentences and the war on crime on drugs, it wasn't a war on drugs, it was a war on us that was put forth by certain conservative presidents as well as conservative people in the Congress. And that, what it did was swell the prison populations in terms basically of minority, brown, black, and poor people.
And what people might not know what you mean when you say it wasn't a war on drugs, it was a war on us. To that point, like, that's not just rhetoric, that's based on facts and data.
Because percentage-wise, we were the ones that were going to jail.
Right. Despite the fact that many studies have shown that different races use drugs, sell drugs, possess drugs at the same rates, but disproportionately
jail time is
in terms of involvement with the criminal justice system and sentences for violations connected to drugs, they disproportionately impact black people. And when I say disproportionately, I mean like over 50%.
Well, let's take marijuana and cocaine. If you take cocaine, in terms of its powdered form, especially white folks were getting probation. Crack cocaine became something that you could get 10, 15, 20 years of life in certain states. So it was such a disparity in terms of the justice system. And you talk about marijuana, which was so subjective that most of the people in certain states could get 10, 15 years for smoking a joint, which is now being legalized, but you still got people in confinement who were convicted under these archaic and racist statutes.
And even though it's becoming legal, what does that really mean as far, I think we can have a whole show.
Yeah, well, back to your question, people, Lolita, are coming out of jail, but they have criminal records. They can't get employment. They can't get an opportunity to feed and earn a living for their families, and so they are channeled right back into the system in terms of violation of paroles, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a self-perpetuating system of injustice, particularly on poor people.
Absolutely, and we saw that as well in the miniseries. And if the thing is that now the words that we talk about all the time, now when you're able to see it, it brings it to a different light. So when we come back, we'll talk more. We're back to commercial break, so stay tuned.
White keys only have this bitch jumping.
Okay. If I sit around, hold up. Look. If I sit around, hold up. Yeah. Rebel rap. Let's do it.
If I sit around, I'ma smoke some more. Wasn't even thinking about smoke before, but I'm in my head and I'm in the bed. Don't know who I am, like I'm wearing a mask. Working old, tell 'em where the cash. If you wear the cash, tell 'em where the cash. If you playing for you gon' run it back. Don't make promises, but I promise that. Don't promise me, cause I ain't into that. Fell in love with that and got hurt from that. That was all over and the curtains back. Can't see you not noticing that. I'm letting it go, it ain't holding me back. Yeah, I'm on dice, but ain't come for the crack. Drinking with uncle, we only do jack. How I'm alive, I thank God for that. Praying about it, things getting better. Open it up with my name on the letter. Why you crazy about it? Saying whatever, you shy to be you. You know you gotta be you. Sometimes I need privacy too. Yeah, you know I ride. You know I ride, and you know you ride for me too. Yeah, you know I. Look.
So, Jacqueline.
Yes, Mom?
I wanted to talk to you about something and... Oh, wait. Hold on. I just got a text. Oh, there's another one. Wow. Busy, busy me. So, anyway...
Oh, wait, Mom. I just got a message. My friends keep commenting on my comment. Oh, there's another one. So many comments on my comment.
Oh, I can't wait to watch TV tonight. Playoffs!
Hey, guys, check out my new video game. Pew, pew. Wait. Mom, what? Huh?
What? Hold
What'd
on.
you say? Wait a second, what?
This weekend, unplug. Take your family to the forest. There's nothing in the world like experiencing nature firsthand. Trees, paths, bluebirds, streams. Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. To find the forest nearest you, go to discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
You are listening to BeExposedRadio.com.
And you've got a hell of a different degree of exposure.
Welcome back to Now We're Talking with Mervin and Lolita. Hello. We're continuing our amazing conversation with a criminal law legend, attorney, Dwight Pettit.
Yes.
And we've been talking about so many different things, including the Central Park Five, but also just the implications of that case on today's society, on our children, on those of you that are parents. What are some of the things you should be talking to your children about in terms of interacting with law enforcement? And our show's flown by so quickly. This is actually just a couple segments left. So
yeah, so we've talked a couple of things, and this is a really meaty topic that really draws up emotion. Just like when I saw the movie, I've seen it, the docuseries, I've seen it 3 times, and I know it's difficult to watch, but it's just unbelievable to me, and I think it sparked so many questions and discussions that I think is the right time, at least for me and my household, to really begin to talk about these things, and they're just reality. So for those of you just joining in, we have talked police aggression and arrest, and when we talk that, you got to watch the show if you haven't seen it from the beginning, but you really helped us understand that when you're in that moment of arrest or being pulled over, you really need to take that time to be present and to obey. Right. That's the time where you listen, you obey, and then after that is when you go back and try to figure out who's this person that did this to me, I feel wrong, how do I retain someone in order to help protect my rights, further rights. The next section that we talked was court system and bail, right? With that, you helped us, you said, listen, it's simple, retain counsel and remain silent. Those are the Miranda rights, and listen to them. Because I think something else that you said that resonated with me too is everybody doesn't have the same goal. Everybody's not your friend inside of that room. Exactly. You're clear on who your friends are, and you didn't know that person before then. Yeah. So it's not your friend.
and along those lines, in terms of just knowing your rights, you can ask an officer, and I'd like to know what you think about this, am I free to leave? Because there are many situations I've seen where someone has asked that question and they're told, no, you're not free to leave, you're being temporarily detained. So just them asking that question actually then puts them in a position where they know not to do something crazy, like try to walk away because they said something.
You mean a police officer?
Well, as a civilian, you can ask the officer, am I free to leave? No, because the answer to that question might be yes, right? Or the answer might be no.
And Mervin, you bring up a tremendous point. A lot of people don't realize the distinction in constitutional protections between custodial interrogation. Custodial means that you're under arrest. And so if you get that definitive answer from the police, because in many cases they say, well, nobody told him he was under arrest. We asked these questions, and he blurted this out. He said this and said that.
Right.
So I didn't have to advise him of Miranda because he wasn't under arrest. So it's very, very important to understand that in custodial interrogation starts when you understand that your liberty has been restricted.
Right. And to that point, the officers may not have said you're under arrest, but the courts may later deem that the circumstances were such that it was tantamount or equivalent to being under arrest. So if you're not sure, you should ask.
Exactly. You hit it right on the head. Can I leave? Once he tells you no or she tells you no, then this custodial interrogation attaches a Miranda and all your constitutional rights attach.
Okay, I'm writing that definitely down. We also talked juvenile detention, right? which is major because in the docuseries, what we were able to see is that a child, Corey Wise, at the age of 16, was put into adult prison as a result of his crime, coupled with his age at the time. And in the juvenile detention arena, what's that really telling us, right? Yeah, so there's that.
The rights are totally different.
Rights are totally different. And I think what you were able to tell us is that your defense attorney can really look at different facets and see if they're able to push that back.
Get you back into juvenile if you're charged as an adult.
Yes, absolutely.
We have a question from our YouTube live chat.
Oh, great.
And Ron wants to know, if you can't afford a good attorney or counsel, what alternatives do people have? And also, once you get a public defender, how can you change that public defender for perhaps a pro bono attorney or something of that nature?
Well, public defender is free. And you have state public defenders, you have federal public defenders, and believe me, they are very talented. And so just because it's not an economic relationship doesn't mean that you're not getting representation. As we started off in the show, my beginning of my career, even though I had a practice, was also part-time as a public defender.
Yes.
So to that point, throughout the country, public defenders are often disparaged, and I've heard it many times. In the jurisdiction where I practice, the public defenders are some of the best attorneys that I've ever encountered, consistently and routinely, but yet there's still a prevailing narrative that if you have a public defender, your attorney is going to be bad, the services are going to be poor, they don't really care about the outcomes of the cases, they have so many cases that they can't pay attention to your case. What do you say about that narrative?
Well, I would say it's totally false, and especially when you get into the federal system. If you get into the federal system, the federal public defenders are some of the best lawyers in the country. And many of them were prosecutors before they became public defenders. And the federal public defender system, they will give you a lawyer that is free of charge, but he's paid by the federal government. So you have two systems. You have the federal public defender, and you have counsel that is free to the individual, but paid by the federal government.
I think the second part of his question,
same thing with the state.
If I heard it correctly, was what do you do if you want to switch attorneys and you have a public defender? Was that the second part?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always a defendant's right to switch lawyers, whether he goes from private to public defender, whether he goes public defender to private. Once he does what is necessary in that particular state or jurisdiction to in fact let the court know that he wishes to switch counsel, and court authorize it, that's his constitutional right.
Okay. And then next week, Ronald, next week we're going to have on two other attorneys as we move forward. So we'll have Miss Elva Tillman, who is a retired attorney but doing some work, and she's going to be talking about the Baltimore Legal Museum, right? I didn't even know there was a Baltimore Legal Museum. So there's some hidden gems right here in Baltimore for the legal arena. Next, we're also going to have Ellen Righty of the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service. So we're going to be talking pro bono. So tune in next week where we'll be talking, and we can ask that exact same question next week as well and try to get you some answers. So tune in. And we talked about hopefully we answered your question, but we also talked about when you leave from the prison system, how do you integrate yourself back into society when it's so tough because you have a felony on your record, you might be on parole, you might have all these stigmas attached to you. And are there any programs?
Well, I'm certain there are, but that stigma of having a criminal record, there's certain challenges being made now, certain legislative processes that are taking place in different jurisdictions as to whether employees can consider your criminal record or not consider it. So there is some progress being made in that area. But heretofore, it has been a stigma which has obviously compromised your ability to have employment. Yeah. And so until we get progressive in terms of the legislative bodies passing laws that recognize that once you've served your time, that should cut off the penalties, and the penalties of being denied an economic opportunities is a penalty that should be deemed to be unconstitutional once you've served your time and your probationary time.
I know that in a lot of states, one of the big impediments is that if you have a felony on your record, you cannot hold a state license. So that means, whether it's something that requires less school, like cosmetology or being a barber, or whatever the case may be, to something more ambitious like being a dentist or a doctor or an attorney. There are a lot of impediments to that directly connected to the fact that you have a felony on your record. So I agree totally that there's a lot that needs to be addressed at the legislative level. But in terms of re-entry, one of the things that we're seeing more and more across the country are re-entry programs that focus on employment opportunity and educational opportunity. And I know that one of the things that some jurisdictions have is that they provide all of those things for you. And oftentimes it's court ordered as a condition of your probation or as a condition of your parole if your state still has parole. And in some cases, there's a lot of success. In other cases, it's just too hard for financial reasons and community, influence reasons to stay on the straight and narrow. But I think I firmly believe that most people that commit crime do it for lack of opportunity and reasons that are connected to economics. And where I've seen people be most successful is when people can come out of dealing with the system, whether it's jail or prison, and can have some skill that will allow them to work for themselves, or to be entrepreneurs, or start businesses in some way, shape, or form. But it's hard. It's an issue that is a multifaceted issue. It requires resources from a lot of different directions, and quite frankly, it requires a lot of resources that I don't know if as a society we're willing to devote to the criminal justice system and to criminal justice reform.
Yep. So it has been such a pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm wondering if you could give us a synopsis for those who just joined about your book. That would be great if we can start with that, I think. Yeah. And then as we move into the next segment, we can round some things off.
Well, the book was basically written to, in fact, address what I perceived at the time for my criminal practice as well as my civil practice.
Tell us the title of the book.
Under Color of Law.
Under Color of Law.
And basically that comes from the statutory provision called 42 U.S.C. 1983, which was a 1971 civil rights statute, which prohibited at that time sheriffs and officials and judges and mayors and what have you from exercising powers over people in the South, especially after the Civil War and across this nation, under color of authority. In other words, the law gave them the right to deprive you of your constitutional rights, and that was sanctioned. It was Jim Crow South, and that those laws have carried over in terms of civil rights laws, which have allowed you to have an opportunity to have some legal actions to compensate you for the violation of those laws, and everything, including Brown v. Speaker, Board of Education, integration of schools, all the civil rights statutes come from that provision under color of law, which means acting under Constitution being provided, which is now meaning that you're acting illegally. At that time, it was sanctioned by the federal government. I wrote the book because I wanted to enlighten people that what I was discovering in the 70s and 80s, that this country was moving to a standstill in terms of civil rights and constitutional rights. When the Reagan administration came in, judges began to change, the legislative bodies began to change, and we moved into a very conservative time. And the country has totally begun to move backwards in terms of the statutory provisions of the Congress, in terms of state legislatures, in terms of the executive branch and what have you. And I didn't mean to be so accurate that we would be where we are today, watching our whole constitutional system being challenged by the executive administration that's in power now. And so what I was trying to tell people in the book it's from certain progression of civil rights cases that I handled, that we were in a very dangerous period of time moving into the 2000s. We could not afford to sit back on our haunches and in celebration of our gains in terms of civil rights. The Voting Rights Act has been declared unconstitutional, as you said earlier. Affirmative action has been taken apart. All types of gerrymandering and shifting of the political system has been taken apart. We cannot afford as a people to let everything that we gave blood and life for to be in fact taken away from us while we're saying this is the new America or the new generation or the past civil rights generation. The young people, they say, well, I remember a time when I would speak someplace, one of my buddies introduced me as the old civil rights lawyer. He wasn't talking about my age. He was talking about that the civil rights lawyer at that time was archaic. It was history. That we didn't need civil rights lawyers anymore because we had made it. We had been accepted into the mainstream. And then Obama came around, and Obama said, I won through the electoral process. I won through the new civil rights legislation for voting and what have you. And folks in the mainstream said, well, wait a minute. We gave you voting rights. We gave you the right to elect mayors, congressmen, and some sheriffs and so forth. But we didn't tell y'all to go out and elect a president. Right. And so America got upset and began to really move this turning back the clock into a high disproportionate rate in terms of the progress that had been made in terms of civil rights. And so we are on the verge now of watching this country as we talk, watching history unfold in front of us. Absolutely. Almost history repeating itself from the days after slavery and all the rights and so forth that was called Reconstruction. We are going through a second Reconstruction in American history as we talk, and if we don't do something to stop it politically, we are in big trouble. And so I wanted the book to explain that to the American body politics, that we were in a very, very dangerous time and we needed to be aware of our responsibilities to politically move forward, to keep the clock from turning backwards.
Hits on to that point is what can we do? We like to leave people with what can we do, which we'll do at the start of the next segment, the last segment, but you mentioned it. We got to get out and vote. This election is even bigger, I feel like, than the last election, right? We know what we don't like. Get out and vote. Get out and do something.
It's a matter of life and death.
It is a matter of life and death, our life and death. We're seeing our black and our brown boys. We're seeing ourselves. We're seeing what you can do when you're in power at such a high level. And just the recklessness that's out there with no regard to anything else. So not a political show, but you see it every single day. So the point is, what are you going to do? Right? What are you going to do? And let's take some action. So when we're back, we are going to round everything up. I can't believe our 2 hours are over already.
Enjoyed it. Yeah.
So we're going to leave you with our acronym when we're back in 1 minute, right?
Yep. We'll be right back with Now We're Talking for our wrap-up. Stay with us.
The Artist Exchange Radio Show every Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., every Saturday, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Real artist, real talk, real live on BeExposedRadio.com. I was meeting with a friend yesterday, and I've gotten to the point where don't ask me a question because the truth is going to come out. And exactly. Just don't do it.
If you ain't looking for the truth, don't come to me.
Don't do it because I can't hold my tongue. And she wants to be this stylist, boutique, but you're not doing anything in that nature, and I can't take you seriously if you're not doing those things. And I understood why people didn't take me seriously, because I found myself in somebody else's lane. I was good at what I was doing and what I wanted to be, but I wasn't doing it for me. So how can I ask you to take me seriously if I'm living in somebody else's shoes?
And nobody can do what you do, and I think that that's a big problem that people face now. Like, you see what somebody else is doing and you want to do that when that's not your lane.
That's not your lane.
That's not what you're supposed to be doing.
But it's popular, it's getting that person money, it's getting that person applause. Oh, I want applause. I want money. Let me stand over here behind them.
And then a lot of times people aren't honest with themselves either. Like, I was thinking earlier today, I've been woke for almost 2 days, so so you get honesty, yes. And I was thinking, like,
The Artist Exchange Radio Show.
unknown to find who we really are. Crash into something new and take a break from my broken heart. Talk with the hip, tell me you lie. I think we should go for another round. Baby, try not to say too much. Let your love come down. If you wanna rule, it's some rules you gotta live by. Live by. Stay true to your cool, make a move, don't wait on nobody else. And if it feels like a melody, sing a song, be my radio. And if you follow me there, I'll follow you back. Let the night unfold. I can tell that she can't get enough, show enough, she couldn't get the feels off from me. I know she couldn't get the feels off from me. Touching hands till we dance in the dark, show enough.
Only in the forest can you see this. But nothing beats the moment you see that.
Cool!
That's your child's eyes opening up to a world of possibilities.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org. Learn about forests near you and discover cool things to do when you go. And you might just see this. Visit discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
There's a rumor going around that Tyler Perry and Oprah are beefing. Well, let me tell you about this. Tyler.
You are listening to BeExposedRadio.com.
It is Thursday, and we have just had such a great conversation tonight. It's really a deep conversation. It's a great conversation, a challenging conversation, one that we need to have, but it really gets at your spirit. I can feel my energy down from when I first came in, and I think it's just the introspective look and the realities of where we sit right now politically, as a person of color, as a mother of a son of color. It just puts you inside of this arena where you really need to challenge everything, and these are the harsh realities that we kind of talk today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, folks. It's been my pleasure.
Absolutely. So as always, we leave you with an acronym, and today is all about being armed, ARMED, arming yourself with the knowledge and making sure that you're protecting yourself with the armor that is you. So we have our A is, am I under arrest? Am I free to leave? Those are two questions that are absolute rights to ask, and know those answers, that you're free to go, right? Depending on the answer. When we talked R, it was really about retaining counsel and remaining silent. Your Miranda rights, but really to protect yourself. And you reminded us that everybody in the room is not your friend. You might not have known them 5 minutes earlier. So just remember that, and remember that you're there to protect yourself. So retain counsel and remain silent. Our M, we have, marry your principles and ideas to people in your circle. And I want to thank Ron again for that question, Ronald, for that question earlier, or comment, that we really need to start challenging the people that are around us. And so that really is about marrying your own principle and ideas to the people in your circle. Do they have the same ones? And if not, are they truly your friends? E was for economic status does not prevent you from being defended. We talked about public defenders today. Next week, we're talking about pro bono attorneys. So tune in. And D is all about driving to be your best you by really leveraging your voice. We talked about that before, but talking about your life experiences to people. We talked about the Central Park 5, and if you look at where they are now, they spent between 6 and 13 and a half years incarcerated, and we see them now as speakers, talking, telling their stories, really to educate us and to get us moving in some action. So give back. We need to vote for people who will advocate for us. You said that on the break.
Absolutely. Who will advocate for our rights, who will put our interests on their platform and give us some sense of confidence that they take the issues that affect our community seriously, and that they're willing to put in the effort and the action behind the words.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, we are going to go down and let you guys know how you can get in touch with us.
Okay. My telephone number is 410-542-5400, and my email is adpettit@adwightpettit.com. And my Facebook and what have you is, again, A.D. Pettit at adwightpettit.com. And the book, my book, Under Color of Law, you can get through Amazon.com is the quickest way, and Barnes & Noble. But Amazon.com, I think, is probably the quickest for most people.
And those of you that don't know who Mr. Pettit is, you really should look him up, do your homework, do your research, and you'll see that he's legendary for so many reasons. In terms of defending people who have been accused of crimes, in terms of fighting for ordinary citizens of the community who have had their rights violated, his record is extremely impressive. Yeah. So definitely look him up. And you can find me on my website at mervinbourne.com. That's MERVINBOURNE.com. I am the author of A Single Mother's Guide to Raising a Son. I'm also an attorney and public speaker and motivational speaker. You can order my book on Amazon.com, where it's available in both paperback as well as e-book for those of you that are doing the Kindle thing. So, and if you want to send comments, questions, or show ideas to the show, you can do that by emailing nowwe'retalkinglive@gmail.com. nowwe'retalkinglive@gmail.com.
And we answer them personally, so we'll get right back to you. And I am Lolita E. Walker. I'm a certified life and executive coach. I am a retreat host. Next one is coming up September 19th through the 22nd. So I would love to see. It's a women's weekend renewal retreat. And it's 4 days of really women just taking time, gifting yourself time back that you give so much to others, and being in a space where you are supported at all times. So come on out. I am also the author of The Intersection of You and Change. It's a women's empowerment guide to leap to your unknown. So plenty of stuff inside, and I'm just so excited that you joined us tonight and every Thursday. So we'll see you back next week, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. Bye.
Have a good week, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern.
You're like an internal bleeder. Can't see your pain, but it can silently kill ya. So deeply wounded, but don't say a thing. Too afraid of what the people may say or think. So you just sit there and you suffer in silence. Your pride won't let you just uncover your secret. Don't wanna look weak in your image, it ain't worth losing. So you just act as if it's nothing happening.